Good evening and welcome to Arizona Illustrated for Wednesday, the 7th of November, 2012. I'm Tony Paniagua. The contentious and divisive campaigns around the country are finally over, and most of the races have been decided, although a few remain too close to call and there are still many uncounted ballots. As part of Your Vote 2012, we are joined by political reporters Christopher Conover and Andrea Kelly, who are speaking to different groups about the latest situations. Andrea, so here in Southern Arizona, we have 3 congressional districts that impact this community. What's going on with those congressional districts?
Well, we've got sort of 3 different situations in those. The most clear-cut situation is Congressional District 3, which is the southwestern portion of Southern Arizona. And in that race, U.S. Representative Raul Grijalva has a clear lead over Republican Gabriela Saucedo Mercer. He's got a double-digit lead in the percentages, so he's probably going to hold on to that. There are still some votes left to be counted, but it looks like he's probably going to hold on to that. Then I'll jump to Congressional District 1, which is northwestern Pima County, and it actually goes all the way up to the Utah state line. In that race, Democrat Ann Kirkpatrick has a lead over Republican Jonathan Payton. That's a closer lead, a much closer lead, so we're going to see if that holds through some of the vote counting continuing this week, but she does have a couple points on him. And then in Congressional District 3, we have a race that, Congressional District 2, we have a race that remains too close to call. That's the race that Ron Barber won over the summer to finish out the term. And last night we saw the results coming in for the 2 who were competing for a full 2-year term, Barber and Republican Martha McSally. And as we sit, that race is too close to call. They're within less than 2,000 votes of each other, and there's a lot more ballots than that to be counted. So we're still going to wait to see results on that. And both campaigns are actually waiting to sort of weigh in. They agree that we should wait and see where the votes get counted. Let's hear from Martha McSally.
We feel good. I mean, went to bed last night, or I guess this morning, in a good position with a good lead. And there's a process that's going to continue to work itself out to make sure that every vote is counted, both in Pima County and in Cochise County. And so we will let the experts work that process out.
So that was what she said this morning. Last night the race was too close to call. This morning it remained too close to call, and even now it's still. So she was just commenting on how close the race was, thanking her volunteers, and basically, again, saying she wants to let the process play out. And we heard very similar comments this morning from Ron Barber's campaign. We spoke to his campaign manager, Jessica Floyd, and she had this to say about the close race.
Well, certainly we've seen close races here in Southern Arizona before. We know that Ron won the early vote and those early ballots last night by over 8,000 votes. So we are cautiously optimistic going into what's going to be several days, it looks like, of counting ballots and letting the recorder's office make sure that every Southern Arizonan's voice is heard.
And you heard Ron Barber's campaign manager there reference close races in the past. If you recall, back in 2010, the last congressional election here, it was very close on election night between Gabrielle Giffords and Jesse Kelly, and that actually took until the Friday of election week to work out, so we may be in another few days out situation.
And Christopher Conover, you were speaking to the Pima County recorder. A lot of people wondering, why is it that we still have uncounted ballots? How does the system work that we still have to wait maybe sometimes a day or more to get the final results?
Well, this is definitely going to be at least a day or more, and probably more like 10 days at this point. We're dealing with 2 separate sets of uncounted ballots. The first are, if you will, the late early ballots. People who got early ballots in the mail, didn't get them mailed back for whatever reason, and just took them to a polling place. Those are being counted now and should go relatively quickly. The slowdown on those is they have to verify all those signatures, but that should go relatively quickly. The Pima County Recorder, F. Ann Rodriguez, says there are about 31,000 of those that need to be counted. Now, the more difficult ones and the ones that will take time are the provisional ballots, people who filled out the paperwork to vote because their names weren't on the rolls in their particular precinct they were at or something like that. There was a problem. There are about 26,000 of those, and that number may climb according to the recorder. Those, they take more time because they have to figure out why the ballot was done provisionally. They may have to talk to the voter. They have to check it against voter rolls and all kinds of things like that. They have about 10 days to get that done. This is not the largest amount of provisional ballots that the county has had. That belongs to a couple of years ago, 28,000. They were able to get those done in time, but it's going to be a lot of long nights for the recorder's staff.
And it seems like in the McSally and Barber case, Andrea, we're sort of reliving the past here from 2 years ago when Gabrielle Giffords was in the race.
That's right, and as I mentioned, we waited several days for that to get resolved, and I think we're probably going to be waiting for several days on this one, too. One thing that both of the candidates are talking about, both of the campaigns, are where those votes are coming from. And it looked like when we started to get those early vote results last night, Ron Barber was doing better with the early voters. And then Martha McSally came up from behind when the day of voters started to come in, which is why it's still so hard to determine. Because as Christopher was talking about the earlies and provisionals that still need to be counted, those early ballots that were dropped off at polling places yesterday may have been voted by people who actually voted them yesterday, may have been voted weeks before and they forgot to mail them. And the provisionals, we don't know which way those are going to go.
And Christopher, you are also speaking to the Secretary of State here in Arizona. What is he saying about all of this?
Well, the Secretary of State is, of course, the top election official in Arizona. And he conducts with the governor and other members of the state government what's called the official canvass. They get all the official numbers from the county recorders and then verify them and then make the election official. That all is timed out in statute. At this point, they're not really prone to let the counties have more time to count. Now, F.Ann Rodriguez did say she may ask for more time. She's not expecting to need to, but she may ask for it. The Secretary of State's office is, at this point, not very prone to give that, but there's 10 days to work with. So we're in a very slow process, methodical process. It's a legal process at this point. Everybody wants to make sure all the votes are counted and counted correctly. So let's take our time and go forward. Of course, with a close race like this McSally-Barber race, everybody's thinking recount. Recounts don't happen and can't happen unless it's within 1/10 of 1%, the vote. So the Secretary of State's office said, unless that happens, no matter how badly the candidates may want a recount, legally, there's no recourse and there will not be a recount unless that threshold is met.
Did you hear from anybody, Andrea, yesterday about the fact that there are still situations where we don't know at the end of the night, or is it just part of life, modern life? Because we have these really tight races, sometimes that just won't happen.
Yeah, I think people are starting to accept it. I mean, it seems a little funny that we used to have all of our voting on paper and the results were posted on doors of election offices on paper and we would know at the end of the night who won. And now we have all this technology and it's taking longer to tell. But it also allows more people, I mean, exactly what Christopher was saying. If you went to the wrong polling place yesterday, you could still vote. You voted on a provisional ballot and you might have been turned away years in the past. So.
All right. Well, Andrea Kelly and Christopher Conover, political reporters for Arizona Public Media. Thanks.
Thanks, Tony.
Supporters of continuing a 1-cent sales tax for education experienced a sizable defeat at the ballot box. It was a complete reversal from the voters' decision 2 years ago when more than 60% approved the temporary 1-cent sales tax for 3 years. Michael Chihak has an interview about Proposition 204.
Ann Eve Pedersen, Arizona Education Parent Network, thanks for speaking with me.
Thank you, Michael.
Just a short time ago, you told me that the polling was in your favor on Proposition 204, but it lost almost 2-1. What happened to that lead?
Well, what we saw, Michael, is a very strong lead. And unfortunately, when the dark money started coming in and the opposition bought, lots of TV ad time, they poured more than almost $1 million of the dark money in with a complete misinformation campaign that misled voters. And so we could see when that started, our polling started to go down. And unfortunately, they kept it up. We didn't have the resources to respond, so we were eventually completely dark on television while they continued out there with their misleading attack ad.
Dark money, what do you mean by that?
Well, they brought money in from a group called Americans for Responsible Leadership. It's based in Phoenix. It's run by a guy, Sean Noble, who's a political operative, and he has ties to the Koch brothers. And California has deemed, because they also put money in to fight some California ballot measures, that this was in fact money laundering. And so Americans for Responsible Leadership now is going to face probably some civil and even criminal penalties in California. But in essence, Doug Ducey, state treasurer, who was leading the No campaign, facilitated the use of this dark money that has been deemed money laundering to fight what is a citizen's grassroots movement. And so it was very disappointing to see them stoop to those levels to bring in out-of-state special interest money to fight a group of parents. Remember, we're a group of volunteer parents who worked for the past 2 years to get this on the ballot.
Now, you had a pretty good budget for your campaign, too. Did you have out-of-state money?
We had one out-of-state donor, the National Education Association, and we all know who that is. It's teachers. Their dark money came from, again, this group, Americans for Responsible Leadership, that's linked to the Koch brothers. The Koch brothers are Kansas billionaire brothers, and they have an agenda, and their agenda is the privatization of education. They believe that we should move to a for-profit model, and as parents, we find this deeply concerning because they do have allies in the state of Arizona, in our state legislature, in our executive branch, and there are people working right now who have a privatization agenda who would like us to move to a voucher system. And so to think that out-of-state money with a special interest like that came in and played here and was basically used to mislead voters. And unfortunately, news of this only broke Monday, the day before the election. And so I'm afraid that as voters find out what actually happened, that somebody came in and bought an election, they're going to be very upset by that. And we're already starting to hear sort of the outrage from people that this in fact happened, and that our state treasurer, groups like the Arizona Chamber of Commerce, which led the opposition, was run out of their office. Legislative leadership, Steve Pierce, Andy Tobin, Governor Brewer, helped facilitate this. It's very disturbing.
So does that mean that you think you can have another shot at this with an initiative or some other kind of measure?
Well, the problem hasn't gone away. And so we have a deep funding crisis in the state of Arizona. And when Prop 100 goes away, we're going to lose $1 billion from the state budget. There's $450 million in corporate tax cuts coming. And so we're going to be removing $1.5 billion from the budget. I'm very concerned there are going to be even more school funding cuts. And so we need a solution. And if the legislature is not going to provide a solution, then absolutely we will go back to voters. But what we've learned now is the way that the opposition, the lengths to which they're willing to go. They're willing to deceive people. They're willing to use dark money. And they're willing to fight. This was a very unfair fight. And I think that they know that and that that's going to come out. So we would have to be prepared for that. And we would really have to have a war chest to be able to successfully fend off these anti-education forces.
Now, your organization kind of has its roots in going to the legislature and asking and lobbying for more money for education and not being successful at that. Now we have a new legislature coming in January, new makeup. The Republican majority isn't quite as strong as it was, not a supermajority in either house now, as I understand it. Is there opportunity there? Have you looked at that and think you can get something done legislatively?
I think that there will be some funding put back, mostly to help fund the unfunded reforms that have been mandated by the state legislature. I do think there probably will be some successful efforts on that front, and that's necessary and that's important. But we have to remember that the legislature, we led the nation in the depth of cuts. $1 billion was cut. And there's no way that they're going to restore $1 billion because it just isn't there. And we are still among one of the worst funded education systems in the nation. So I'm very concerned about what the future holds for Arizona school children if we don't come up with a better solution. And I'm also really concerned about the economy, because one of the things that happened in fighting for this is we traveled around the state, and I kept hearing from community after community that had tried to bring a really good business with good paying jobs into their community, and that business would come, they would check out Arizona's standing in terms of education funding, and they would turn right around and leave and not try and even give it a go here in Arizona, because businesses need to have an educated workforce and their employees need to have good schools where they can send their kids. So in order to really turn things around in Arizona, we're going to need a better solution. I don't know what we're going to get from the legislature, but they can't just throw education a bone and pretend to have solved the problem.
Annie Pedersen, president of the Arizona Education Parent Network, thanks for speaking with me.
Thank you, Michael.
The state's second largest school district will be welcoming 2 new governing board members after a competitive election last night in which 12 people were running for 3 seats. Fernanda Echavarri has the story about the election in the Tucson Unified School District. where one incumbent has been able to hold on to his position, but 2 others are being replaced.
The Tucson Unified School District is experiencing a decrease in enrollment. It could face a $17 million deficit, and it has made national headlines after the shutdown of its Mexican American Studies classes. Starting January 1st, the governing board will look quite different after only one incumbent running for re-election kept his seat. Crystal Foster took 13% of the vote. Mark Stegeman, who's already a board member, came out right behind Foster with 12.9% of the vote, and the last seat went to Cam Juarez, who had 10% of the vote. As of earlier today, Pima County still had about 80,000 ballots to process and count. Half of those were early ballots dropped off at the polls on Election Day. Those are expected to be counted by tomorrow. The other half are provisional ballots, and results from those could take up to 10 days. Foster says she's looking forward to taking a seat in the boardroom.
Today starts a brand new day. It's a new vision, a new direction, and we bring the community values and do the right thing for our kids and our classrooms.
Foster says she's been following what's been happening in TUSD very closely.
I've been at the board meetings, so right now I'm prepared, just as any of us, to definitely go forward with that information, right? Take where the board stopped and come together, and we have to come together as a team.
She's been an educator for 20 years and is currently a teacher in the Sunnyside School District. She says running for a seat on TUSD's governing board seemed like a natural progression from teaching.
I ran this race to bring that perspective to the decisions, because those critical decisions that were happening in our community didn't have the perspective of the classroom, of the kids, and of the teachers.
Cam Juarez is an urban planner and has a young son in the TUSD Early Childhood Education Program. He says it's because of his son that he decided to challenge 3 incumbents in the race.
I am one of 50,000 parents that are still left at the district, and our son has the luxury of having 2 parents at home with college degrees. There's a lot of little boys and a lot of little girls in the district that don't have that, and my mom taught me to do the right thing, and this is what we want to do. I know it sounds corny, but we want to make sure that we're standing up for the kids who don't have anyone to stand up for them.
Juarez says the Tucson Unified School District is facing tough decisions.
I'm still a little surprised that I was able to get in there. We put out the best race we could, and that's what all we could do. So I'm really glad that the voters spoke up and they said that they wanted someone to represent them on the board that was representative of the district.
Mark Stegeman is a former TUSD governing board president and was elected to the board in 2009. He led some of the most heated public meetings and has been confronted by protesters and supporters of the Mexican American Studies classes.
The Mexican American Studies issue created a unique situation. Hopefully nothing like that's going to come back. But TUSD is going to have a lot of issues. I mean, we have problems, and people expect us to solve those problems. So there will be contentious issues. School closures, for example, will be a contentious issue.
Stegeman, an economics professor at the University of Arizona, is the only incumbent in the race who kept his seat on the board, with almost 13% of the vote.
I think it means there's a lot of dissatisfaction with TUSD, and I think the new board needs to come together and show some leadership, provide some leadership, and make some big changes in the district.
Miguel Cuevas is currently the president of TUSD's governing board, but his time on the board will end in December when his term expires. He came in 5th place in the race out of 12, and board member Alexander Sugiyama, also an incumbent, lost. Candidates running for a seat on the governing board are not formally associated with any party, but Foster and Juarez say they work closely with the Democratic Party.
The day after the election allows political parties to take a second look at their campaigns and messages to try to figure out what may have been effective and what wasn't. For more on this, we are joined by Kevin Coe. He is an assistant professor in the Department of Communication at the University of Arizona. Thanks for being here, Kevin.
Thanks for having me.
So hundreds of millions of dollars are spent on messages and advertising. Do you think that there are some lessons to be learned? We were speaking ahead of this interview about one example in Ohio. What do you want to tell us about that?
Well, in Ohio, which is, of course, in presidential campaigns, a very important state, which is why so much money, so much time is spent in that state, what you had was a high population of auto workers, and you had a situation where the president was using a message to point out the success of the auto industry bailout, and that turned out to be very popular there. And so the president had been doing that. In response, Governor Romney puts out a commercial late in the campaign that suggests that that's going to take American jobs to China, which on the surface might seem like a powerful attack if indeed it plays out in that way. The problem that Governor Romney faced is after he put out that commercial, what happened was the CEOs, the very top people of GM and Chrysler, refute it. They come out and say that's not what's going on, that's not going to happen, we're keeping jobs here. And so you get in a situation where now it's a back and forth, not between the candidates, which is what people expect, but a back and forth between one of the candidates and the people on the ground, so to speak, doing the work. And that certainly didn't help in what was a close race in Ohio. That certainly didn't help Governor Romney. I'm guessing if he could choose an ad not to air, that probably would be the one he chose at this point.
Do you think the political campaigns sit around and before the ads go out and say these are the possible repercussions if these are interpreted in one way or the other, or if in fact the facts proved that the situation is actually different from what they're saying?
Absolutely. Everything in politics is about calculating risk. And so when you craft a certain advertisement, you craft it very carefully, thinking about who it will appeal to, you focus group it, and do all these things. And yet still, sometimes it comes out and there's something that you didn't quite calculate happening, and it happens, and it can dramatically change the way that particular ad is received.
We've been hearing a lot in this election cycle about demographics and demographic groups. Let's talk about the so-called Latino vote and how the messages worked in that case.
It's been interesting because there's no question that America has undergone quite a notable demographic shift in the past several decades, really, but particularly accelerating. And so campaigns have had to think more carefully about how to appeal to a wider range of demographic groups. And with what's being talked about as one of the key issues in this election was the increase in the Latino vote, and how it seems as though President Obama had quite a bit more success appealing to that voting bloc than did Governor Romney. In part, that probably has to do with the primary campaign, going back a ways. But what happened during the primary campaign is Governor Romney, in doing things that would help him secure the Republican nomination, he took a position on immigration that probably turned off many in the Latino community. And going forward into the general election, it's hard then to scale that back because you're on the record. And so even as he tried to downplay some of that and didn't make it a big issue in the campaign, that's still there. And so that gave President Obama a built-in advantage that was probably difficult for Governor Romney to overcome.
And of course, at least two big senatorial candidates in the country said things about women and abortion that cost them the possibility of getting elected. Did that have a broader message for women, the other demographic group I was going to ask you about?
Well, it's interesting because Democrats tend to do better with women historically, and President Obama did better with women in this election. But I do think the extent to which women's issues become prominent in the campaign can influence the margin of victory that a Democrat might expect among female voters. And in this case, when you have these high-profile incidents where senatorial candidates make remarks that clearly turn off large segments of the public, men and women, frankly, but turn off in particular women, then there's no doubt that starts to shape the broader narrative. It makes women's issues more central. And so while that directly impacted clearly those two Senate races, it probably also had some effect on the margin we see of women going for President Obama as opposed to Governor Romney.
So after these elections, it's sort of like people that are watching a football game, a coach watches a football game, says, this is what we did, this is what we could have done. This happens also obviously in politics, and is there some soul searching? Do people look deep down inside and question what they may have intended to do?
Absolutely, and as a football fan, I appreciate the football analogy. It is Monday morning quarterbacking is what goes on after any campaign, and this was a close election. The key states ended up going to President Obama very consistently, but those were close margins of victory. So it will be interesting to see the extent to which Republicans feel as though they have to really transform things given this outcome. I think the narrative that seems to be emerging so far is they do feel that way, because it's even though this was a close election, the trajectory of some of the demographic shifts and so on suggests that maybe the messages they've been using will increasingly alienate sections of the public that you just can't alienate in this day and age. And so it'll be interesting to see the extent to which they really do try to shake things up. I expect some kind of power struggle in the party, and we'll see what happens.
All right, because those demographics are only going to continue to grow.
Indeed.
Okay, Dr. Kevin Coe from the University of Arizona Department of Communication, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Close to 120 million Americans cast their ballots in the presidential election last night, but millions of others continue to pass up their opportunity to participate in the political process. In spite of the skeptics, however, many citizens believe this is an honor and a privilege. Here are some of your neighbors from Tucson.
It's part of being a citizen, and if you're going to be a community member here, then you're going to want to come out and vote.
My vote counts as much as the next guys, and the super PACs with all their money spending, they only have one vote. I have a vote, and I'm going to exercise that one vote.
I think it's important because it's a citizen's right. I think we all should exercise it because it is our duty. We live here. We should be able to have our chance.
In order to do something, you have to go out and do it. You have to set forth in order to put your foot forward. Nothing's going to happen if you sit and wait.
I think it's something really important that we need to do. We're a free country, and we should appreciate it and do everything we can to keep it that way.
We have the power to change the way the nation is going, and if we don't take that opportunity, then, what's the world going to look like when we're older?
This is not an obligation, but the reason we live in this amazing democracy is because we're allowed to vote and decide and choose, and if you don't decide, then someone else is going to decide for you.
Coming up tomorrow night, we'll tell you about a Veterans Day event in Tucson this weekend. And get ready for two different celebrations which involve coffee and the Finnish culture, respectively. I'm Tony Paniagua from all of us at Arizona Public Media. Have a great night.